Alrighty. So, bit of a long day for everybody. I appreciate you for staying with it. I hope you've had a good day. I've certainly learned a lot. I've been sitting on a lot of them, and I think we're going to wrap up the day in a slightly strange way because a lot of you are here today, and you're really just starting your journey into programming. You're doing boot camps, you're doing workshops, and I'm here to tell you about changing your career. Which may seem a little strange. Now, I'm not saying programming is a bad career choice. Quite the opposite. But what it can do is open up a lot more doors than you think, and that's really what I want to share with you today. So, a little bit about me first. I'm Brian Hobbs. My pronouns are he/him. I'm an engineering director at IDBS. We're part of the Danaher Group. You may have heard my colleague Helen share a bit more information about it earlier. But basically, we develop digital solutions that allow scientists to achieve faster breakthroughs. And we run software as a service, so our products are hosted in Amazon Web Services. And I've always had an interest in technology from a very early age. In fact, this was my first computer. This is what got me started. This is when I knew there was something special about programming and coding. And I suspect you've had a similar journey where something's brought you into this world. Now, when you look at my career, I think it's fairly safe to say the majority of my career has been a pretty linear path along a developer programmer route, as you can see there, right? Um, and that could be fairly typical of a lot of people. But if you start to dig into some of the other things I've done, it's a little bit more squirrely. It's not linear anymore. And I had a lot of opportunities. I've been a line manager for people for quite a while. I've been a scrum master, business analyst. I've taken interim roles while we've been recruiting for people. I've run training courses, been involved with customers, lots of other stuff. And this is what it is I want to talk to you about today. This is the jungle gym. The jungle gym is a phrase we use at IDBS when we're talking about career opportunities. But what does it actually mean? We'll start by looking at the jungle gym. It's actually a North American term. For those in the UK, it's a climbing frame for children, just like this. And when you start climbing, the key thing is that unlike a slide where you go up and then you go down, when you go on a climbing frame, you can choose the route you want to take. You can go in any direction. You can go up, you can go around, you can go through, you can go back on yourself. The choice is really up to you. And it's the same for careers. Just like the climbing frame, your career doesn't have to take this linear path. You can climb sideways. Now, please understand, there's nothing wrong with a linear career path at all. People enjoy what they do, they want to do more of it, and that's absolutely fine. But as you progress, you'll find that opportunities will come along from a sometimes unexpected direction, and that a sideways climb can actually open up a whole new world you've never thought of before. So I want to start by looking at what engineering means in terms of a software company nowadays. When I started, engineering was typically developers and testers, maybe a project manager. We developed software that was deployed on premise at a company's offices. It can sometimes still be seen like that for people coming in. You're focused on maybe a boot camp on programming. You don't necessarily know about the testing side of things. Your focus is on learning a language. And you still see this in TV and film fairly frequently. But actually, software engineering nowadays, it consists of a lot more domains of expertise. So we still have developers and testers, of course, often combined into a feature team where they work closely together. And the line between developer and tester is becoming much more blurred nowadays. Things like a shift left mindset where you bring more testing closer to the code so you can get faster feedback cycles, the development of application programming interfaces, APIs, and automation from a testing point of thing. That line is really becoming blurred. They're often supported by a scrum master who can also be an agile coach, helping the team improve and develop their capabilities. But the developers and testers, they don't work in isolation. If you're delivering cloud-based products, it typically involves the support of enablement teams. Certainly within IDBS, the company I work for, we have an engineering support group that contains architects, performance, security experts, the people who work with the developers and testers to help them design and build secure, scalable systems. We have a continuous delivery team. They manage the build infrastructure. They create the deployment pipelines. They create the tools that work on the plumbing of the applications. And that allows the developers and testers then to work on focusing on problem solving rather than the actual plumbing to make things deployable, for example. And then there's site reliability. And these are the people who actually create and maintain the infrastructure your product actually runs on. And then there are other, typically less technical roles involved in engineering. There's the user experience or UX team. Designing a clean user experience within your product is what keeps your customers sticky. That keeps your customers using your products. There's technical authors. They generate user documentation, help files, make sure the text in the interface actually makes sense. And of course, product owners. These are the people who identify which customer problems we're trying to solve. Now, like I say, these are examples that we have within my company, but different companies may have more or less, or other groups. But what this will give you is, as you're working, you'll get exposure into these domains, and all of these are opportunities for you to climb sideways. So a lot of you here, you're learning JavaScript, so you've got to be a front-end web developer, right? Well, actually, no. Your JavaScript skills can be leveraged in other places. Modern applications nowadays, they're often more than just a website. They have supporting services to allow them to function. So your JavaScript skills could be doing back-end services written in Node.js. You could be doing database administration packages in Snowflake. You could be writing automation tools in Amazon Lambda. And these are just a small example of where JavaScript can operate. And when I talk about changing domains, I'm also talking about changing the products you're working on as well. You're working on a music library app. So does that mean you can only work on the music library app? Well, no, not at all. Sometimes you'll get to the point where you've reached as far as you can go with a certain product or feature set. You're part of a successful team, you're meeting your goals, and you're ready for another challenge. Now, sometimes it could be a natural progression. If you think about a music library app, maybe there's a billing element where you do credit card processing, or maybe naturally you'll segue into something like a video app or get involved with some prototyping. But there are also other opportunities. I'm sure you saw this as well. But during COVID and lockdown in the UK, I noticed a massive increase in the number of food ordering apps, the COVID test result apps. They were springing up all over the place. And a lot of companies, they'll have multiple products, and they'll see opportunities to introduce new ones. And that's an opportunity for you to switch between products. It's a way for you to bolster your skills and your capabilities, because you never know what you might be working on next. It could be the next big thing for you. And the challenge is really in learning the new domain. I mean, your programming languages that you're learning right now and that you're going to continue to develop in your career, they are transferable into these new domains. You could go from front end to back end. You could become full stack. You could go from product A to product B. But actually, your general tech awareness is also transferable. If you consider a UX designer, they're not a programmer, but actually, if they've got a better understanding of the capabilities of the technology, that can help inform them on some of the UX design patterns that they can make. And likewise, a product owner. If you've ever worked in the industry, sometimes you get asked the impossible question, can you do this? And you say, well, no, it's just not possible for these reasons. But that tech awareness can help the product owners make good decisions. So as you change these domains, it will bring a new way of thinking and utilizing your skills. It'll bring you a new set of challenges. A quote from Morgan Freeman: he's always trying new things and learning new things. I think that's very true. There's so much opportunities out there. I'm always finding something new to learn. Every day does seem like a school day to me. And today's been no exception. I've sat in on some fantastic talks, and I've come away thinking already. And what I want to do is share with you a case study of a colleague of mine. This is Sneha, and her educational background wasn't in computer science or anything like that. It was in electrical engineering. And actually, her first job was working in an electricity substation. But she got into tech. She joined a consultancy firm that did software development. And when she joined IDBS, she joined as a developer. And she took a linear route forward and became the technical lead for a team. But then an opportunity arose for her to step sideways and change domain. And she actually worked on a different product. Not just a different product, but she also worked on a web migration project for that product. She did really well in the role. It was all released, and she decided to stay working on that product. And as we developed and moved to being a cloud-based company, she realized there was an opportunity to join the DevOps team, the team that were responsible for working on the build pipelines and the build infrastructure. So she took another step sideways. She stepped away from the world of products into the world of enablement. And then most recently, she's looking into engineering manager role, basically being a line manager as a dual role with that DevOps. So instead of being focused on just herself, she's now focusing on a team. She's had all of these opportunities and has been able to take advantage of them. And a big part of that is around experimentation. And I want to look at a few ways we can find out more about these other domains that we may want to step sideways into as they come along. You can learn a lot about something by trying it out. And the great thing about this is it can often be something you can do by yourself at your own pace and in your own time. Okay, so how do you have a go? How do you experiment? I see it as a combination of three things. The first is learning itself. The internet is pretty commonplace thing nowadays. It's available to us, and in amongst the social media, the ads, the videos of kittens, you can find a lot of learning resources. It's incredibly easy for people to publish things. We've heard about that today. So some of the places you can go, well, the companies you join and you work for, they often provide employees access to learning platforms such as O'Reilly, Pluralsight, LinkedIn Learning. There's a lot out there. We've been talking about Udemy today as well. These all contain materials spanning many different subjects. It could be from programming through to UX design, all the way through to public speaking and beyond. And their subscription model typically means they can be used outside of work hours at no extra cost. So you can brush up on things that maybe aren't relevant to your immediate work. Of course, there's YouTube and other video platforms. It can be a bit of a whirlpool, sucking you down with just kind of one more recommendation. The next thing you know, it's midnight. But it does contain a lot of tutorials, conference recordings. So this session and all the others from this year's festival will be on YouTube. And so it's a great place to start. You can watch people run through it. I'm certainly going to rewatch the coding Flappy Bird in Unity from yesterday. And then there's websites. Popular products and tools, libraries, they have their dedicated websites with lots of tutorials. There's also fan and supporting sites and articles that people post up. And even the smaller tools, they'll normally have a GitHub page with instructions on how to get started. Now, the downside of all of this, it does mean it can sometimes be a little bit hard to find a good source. There can be a lot of noise, and there can be some very opinionated people out there sometimes. And actually, you can come away with more questions than maybe you started with. So what you really need to do is collaborate people. Don't underestimate the power of collaborating with people. This could be your colleagues, it could be your friends, it could be through groups such as codebar, whether it's through the community, through Slack, or through the workshops. Working with somebody who is experienced means you've got an expert on hand who can offer guidance and advice, and most importantly, in my mind, answer your questions. And I just want to say there is no such thing as a stupid question, right? We don't know, so we ask. It's the way we learn, and I've been very fortunate that I've always had my questions answered, and I hope I give the same to everybody. But don't be afraid to ask. That's if you take one thing away from it, it's that. The second thing is around tooling. You can learn a lot by reading or watching videos, but you learn a lot more by putting it into practice. Now, luckily for us, it can be fairly straightforward to get hold of the tools we need. Open source is alive and well, from programming tools, development environments, through to full-on applications. You can often find an open alternative to a paid tool that will ultimately meet the same goal and allow you to learn this new area or technique. Many commercial products will offer a free version for personal use or non-commercial use. We saw Unity being used yesterday. And if all else fails and there is only a commercial tool, well, some of them will offer you a free trial to play with. And if they don't, maybe you can't get hold of the tool, maybe there's no free trial. Well, do you know what? If you know somebody who has it, especially within the company you're working with or in the community, well, reach out, ask them for a demo, or see if they can guide you through an exercise on their copy so you can see what it's actually like to use. The third part is time. Finding time can be tricky, especially if you don't know how much time you need. If you Google developing or mastering a skill, you're going to find some kind of crazy results that talk about 6 months or 10,000 hours. Well, ignore that. Okay, don't let that put you off, because we're talking about experimenting. We're talking about trying something out, not becoming an expert or a master of these skills. So what I would say is give yourself 20 hours. 20 hours is generally a good chunk of time to learn something brand new. It can be more or less. It will depend on who you are and the experiment you're trying to achieve here. But what you want to do is pre-commit that time. Don't give up after the first failure or pain point, but really give it a fair chance. It will vary by person, by employer, by situation as to how you find this time. Some companies will offer on-the-job training. So you might hear it referred to as slack time. You might hear it called as spikes in a sprint if you do agile practices like Scrum. Other people will factor it into their lunch hours or after work, especially if they need the tools that are available at work and they don't have them at home. And of course, well, we're here today, right? Evening, weekend is often popular as well, especially when you consider the meetups, clubs, and similar groups that you can join after work hours. So, take advantage of those because they can help support you and give you that focused time to try this experiment and learn. Common topic we've covered today: fear of failure. Okay, experiments can fail; it's a fact of life. The key is don't be afraid of failure. You're still going to have learned something from it. And in fact, people will often say they learned more from a failure than from a success. So I would say give it a go. Sure, you might fail. You might not get the results you wanted, but you will have learned something, and hopefully you will have had some fun along the way. I think this is a prime example of experimentation, failure, and fun. This is the Red Bull Flugtag. It's a quest for human-powered flight. They run it in various countries, and it's named after the German word for flying day. Basically, people get together and they design and build a human-powered flying machine. Some people take it very seriously. They go into the aerodynamics, they go into the lightweight materials, and they really try and achieve a significant distance. Many don't, much like this team here, I'd have a guess. I think they've come in expecting to fail, but you know what? I'm sure they're going to have some fun along the way. Thomas Edison was one of the most successful innovators in American history, but he also failed, and sometimes tremendously. Well, you don't tend to hear about these failures. They were a big part of his learning process, and they really did contribute towards his successes. So I'd like to share with you another case study, another colleague of mine. This is Eddie. Eddie's goal growing up was to be a scientist like his brother. His educational background is in personalized medicine, treatments that are tailored to you as the individual rather than a generic across the whole market. And as he was doing his studies, he saw how computing is such a big part of managing and processing the data. And as a result, it led him into tech. He actually saw an opportunity on LinkedIn and reached out with no experience and said, "I see you've got a testing role." And so he joined us as a tester. And his first element as a tester there was very much a learning journey. He jumped between teams, between products, understood what testing actually meant within software engineering, and really built up his knowledge moving into a test engineer role with a bit more kind of coding and DevOps style element. We straddling the line maybe a little bit between dev and test. But then the team he was on had an opportunity arise. They needed a security lead for the team, and Eddie gained a bit of exposure from the previous work and said, "Well, I'd like to volunteer for that role." So he took a slight sideways step there and became the security lead. Enjoyed it, and when we actually were growing the team and we advertised for a security engineer, Eddie was there saying, "Well, hey, what about me? I'd like to do this." So he moved sideways again. So from tester into a security role. Over the past year, we've really been starting to build up our data science capabilities as a company. We're a data management company, but data science is the next big thing as we see it. And so as we're building up this team, we advertised a role for data engineer. And this is going back to Eddie's roots. This is something that he'd seen in his study days as being truly important. And despite having no experience in here, he said, "Well, do you know what? I'm passionate about this. I've got a bit of a science background. I've got a strong interest. I'm inside the company, so I know what it is you do. I know your processes and the people. I'd really like to learn this." And so we said, "Well, okay, yeah, we can develop those skills." So he stepped sideways again now into this data engineer role. So how do you find those new opportunities like Eddie? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. This can be the hardest part for some people because it does involve opening yourself up to others, talking to them, and not everybody feels comfortable with that. And you kind of have to embrace that uncomfortable element in there. It is part of the challenge, but by doing that, it will give you those opportunities. And you can start by talking. This is why I said this can be hard, right? One of the goals of a manager is to help develop people to their full potential. But to help people like myself do that for you, you do need to express your interests. You need to tell us what it is you'd like to do. And you can use your one-to-one meetings to discuss these things with them. Likewise, if you have a skip meeting where you meet with the manager of your manager, not every place does this, but if you do, have those same conversations. Chances are you'll be working with colleagues who have more experience, they've been there longer. Either way, they know stuff, they know people, they know the upcoming projects, they know the gossip. And then there's also that person. You might have seen them in a meeting, maybe watch them do a presentation or a video on your internal social network. Either way, you're interested in something that they've done. So why not talk to them about it? And do you know what? The kitchen or the break room is a great place to start up a casual conversation. It's usually a low pressure environment. And if you're going up and say, hey, I saw that presentation you did the other day. I'd love to know more. You're talking about something that interests them. So they will respond and they'll give you advice. And in all of these cases, what we're really talking about is leveraging the networks and skills of these people. They can tell you about existing opportunities. They can recommend you when a new one arises. They could be your coach or your mentor. We've talked about mentoring a few times today. So let's have a quick look at the difference between a coach and a mentor. A mentor is somebody who has the knowledge, skills, and/or experience that you're interested in learning, and that's someone who can impart those things to you. A coach doesn't necessarily have those skills, but what they can do is give you guidance and advice to help you develop them by pointing you in the right direction, by asking a question that can lead you on a journey of discovery. And they're both equally valuable roles. They could be in an official capacity. For example, Jane is going to be your mentor. You'll be meeting once a week. She'll be setting you tasks, reviewing your progress. But they can also be unofficial and just happen in response to an informal conversation. Oh, okay, you're interested. Well, why not go to the tutorial on this website, try it out, and we can go through your results together. Either way, they're going to recognize your interests and they're going to want to help you develop those skills. Join communities of interest. These could be internal, these could be external to the company. There's a few examples on the screen here, but they're really a great place to go because you're with a bunch of people who enjoy what they do. They typically want to learn more. And if you're there expressing an interest, they want to bring you into their world. They want to share, they want to help people get on and move on and really share their excitement, their passion, their interest with them. There's tons of them out there. Codebar is one such example. We've had a few links in the other meetings today. These groups are very welcoming. I can recommend you reach out to them. You can also contribute to open source projects. Now, when you talk about open source projects to a bunch of programmers anyway, the first thought is it's all about coding, it's writing features, it's fixing defects, but it doesn't have to just be about code. They often require help with documentation, with graphics, and with branding. It can also be a great way to learn management or leadership skills, so resolving conflicts or prioritization. And it's, as we mentioned in the previous talk, it's a great way to build up your reputation, your online presence. What I would suggest is when you look for a project to contribute to, look for codes of conduct, look for a contributing file that describes how you can contribute. These are the sign that a project wants people to contribute and will support them. You can find out more information by following the link there. Fairly obvious one, I guess. Watch for job postings. Your company or companies will often post vacancies internally. If you keep an eye open for these postings and if you see one that interests you, well, reach out. Maybe they require somebody with prior experience, okay? But actually, and certainly we saw this with my colleague Eddie, sometimes they can support you learning on the job because you're going to bring something that they require as well, which might be internal company knowledge or a certain background that a new hire would have to learn anyway. So in that case, they can still invest that education time into you. The key is you won't know until you ask. Now, if you don't have the experience they need for that particular role, well, you'll often find they can offer advice on how to get it. There's also the potential for short-term positions, illness cover, for example, maternity or paternity, and these can be a great opportunity to try before you buy. You can really get a feel for these jobs without committing to it. You might finish it and think, "Do you know what, that's not for me." But equally, you might say, "Yes, I've tried it, and this is what I want to do. It's what I want to commit to as a career." We talked a lot about social media today: LinkedIn, Twitter, Slack, Facebook. All of these places, they can provide insights into jobs and opportunities. Although if you're on LinkedIn, you might say a little bit too much. There's some quite overzealous LinkedIn recruiters on there sometimes. But have a look, respond to articles, reach out to people. These are the kind of people who are really happy to share their experience with you. We've talked about this a lot, so I can't overemphasize this. Finally, I would say volunteer for things. It doesn't always have to be about getting a new job or a new role. an opportunity could arise for you to take responsibility for something within a project that you have in your team or your department. Some simple examples: it might be that you need to find a new library for a feature, so that could involve talking to a vendor, assessing the library, purchasing, managing licenses, elements like that. It could be guiding a team on performance behaviors, so encouraging early testing or best practices such as security. Again, going back to Eddie, that's how he got into a security engineer role, just by stepping forward and saying, hey, I'm interested, I'd like to give that a go. And what I'm really saying is it's about creating an opportunity rather than just waiting for it to come to you. If you look at Milton Berle here, he was actually an American comedian and actor. And this is what he said. He made the effort to put the opportunities out there and stand out so people had something to come to him about. Otherwise, if you're just waiting there, you could be waiting forever because people don't know you're interested. So my last case study is my colleague Claire. Now, Claire's educational background was in chemistry, and before she started her career in tech, she was actually an analytical scientist at a pharmaceutical company. But she realized she wanted to do more, and she joined us as a tester. And she developed in that linear role there, became a test lead, taking responsibility for defining the testing for a team. And then an opportunity came up to do some maternity cover. And so she took a chance. She stepped sideways into program manager. And she liked it so much that when the opportunity came for her to stay in that role, she said yes. And our company had a shift. We went from a traditional waterfall style of method for big releases into becoming more agile, so Scrum teams and the like. And so it was a natural then linear progression into a Scrum Master role. And as we grew bigger and we had more Scrum teams, Claire shifted sideways again. She became a line manager for the Scrum Masters to assist them in their growth journeys and their career changes. And we got acquired a few years ago by our parent company called Danaher. And they have a thing called the DBS, the Danaher Business System. It's a set of tools and processes that the company uses. It's fundamental to the way we behave, and it accounts for a lot of success of the company. What that meant for Claire, though, was that we needed somebody to lead the use of DBS within the engineering team. So Claire said, well, I'm interested. So she stepped sideways again. In fact, she's been so good at it, we've lost her from engineering. She's now the DBS lead for the entire company. So congratulations to Claire. It's sad you've gone. You can read a bit more about her journey on this blog post here. So do have a look. She talks about the challenges of running two roles at the same time. In her case, the Scrum Master Manager and the DBS lead. So we're coming to the end now. So I'd like to share some takeaways with you. I've talked a lot about changing careers and climbing sideways, but don't get me wrong, a linear career is absolutely fine. If you enjoy what you do, then stick with it. What I'm really saying is keep an eye out for opportunities. This is your foot into the door into the world of opportunity, and they're going to come at you when you least expect it. So keep an eye open and be open-minded about them. You may fail, but that's okay. It's a way to learn. So don't think of it as failure. Think of it as a way to learn. And every day is a school day. I said it earlier. I've learned so much just over the past couple of days of sitting in on these talks. So if I can still learn, certainly you can. And again, if you don't know, ask. There are no stupid questions, right? It's a great way to learn. Sure, I may not tell you the answer, but I may tell you how to find the answer yourself. And finally, you're going to feel uncomfortable at times, okay? It is what it is. What I would say to you is try and embrace it, because I'm going to leave you on a quote from Claire. You can find this on her blog post, but she owes a lot of her journey to doing things that make her feel uncomfortable. And having worked with her for, well, I won't say how many years now, but having worked with her for a long time, I've seen how that being uncomfortable has actually made her succeed and grow as a person. So I should say to you as well, embrace the uncomfortable. And with that, I'd like to say thank you. Good luck with your careers. This is a step on an amazing journey, and I really hope to see how far you can go with this.